For over 100 years, the small commuter town of Fox River Grove in the northwest suburbs of Chicago has had a harmonious relationship with the railway. Cutting the village in two, the tracks have carried commuters in and out of Chicago, bringing wealth and prosperity to the area. When the highway that ran alongside the tracks was widened in 1990, the distance between it and the railroad became shorter. Now there was only room for 2 cars. More than that, and they would have to queue up on the tracks, waiting for the traffic lights to change, allowing them onto the highway. As a safety precaution, the traffic lights were programmed to turn green whenever a train was approaching, so any cars waiting on the tracks could get out of the way in time. But in 1994, complaints began to emerge about malfunctions in the system. Michael Kunz was the first to notice the problem when on a routine trip to the drive-through bank, he saw something highly unusual at the level crossing across the street.
I saw a car sitting on the railroad tracks and the gates had come down, and the guy was blocked in. My first thought was that the guy's gonna get hit because he's sitting on the tracks. And you know, you feel helpless watching this. And I was like, he's gotta move, he's gotta get out of the way.
What Mike Kunz witnessed was a serious failure in the safety mechanism. The car he saw was waiting for the lights to change. But as the train approached, the system failed to turn the traffic lights green, trapping the car on the tracks.
He pulled off and got out of the way just in time because, you know, and the train came, and it was, then all of a sudden I could see that the light turned green after the train had crossed the intersection.
Having reported the malfunction, Mike Kunz was surprised when 1 week later he saw the engineer's maintenance report.
They had come back and checked their signal, and they came back and said everything's working fine. And I just found that hard to believe that, you know, after I'd seen this, that everything was working fine.
But that wasn't the only time he saw irregularities at the town's level crossings. As part of his duties as a volunteer firefighter, Mike Kunz often found himself outside the town's fire station, waiting for the crews to return. Having seen the original malfunction at Lincoln Avenue, he then saw the same thing happen again at the adjacent crossing on Algonquin Road.
I was thinking the whole time that Lincoln Avenue was the problem, and I just witnessed the same thing at Algonquin Road just by standing out in front of the firehouse and seeing it.
In the year that followed, Mike Kunz filed a total of 7 complaints about signal malfunction at the town's level crossings. Engineers were called out to check, but for some reason they couldn't find the problem.
Either the railroad were contacted first, or the highway department first, and vice versa, and the same thing, they came out, everything's working the way it's supposed to, and now you know this is screwed up, there's something wrong, and these guys, I don't know what they're checking, but they're not checking to see that this light is not changing when it's supposed to. I had made a comment while I was at the firehouse that you know, there's going to be a big accident.
In the month that followed, more complaints came in, and again, engineers failed to detect any problem at the town's crossings. Meanwhile, the community of Fox River Grove went about its business, unaware that concerns had been raised. But on the morning of October the 25th, 1995, a school bus carrying 35 high school students rolled over the crossing and stopped at the red light on the other side. It had its rear end hanging 3 feet over the tracks. An express train, known as the Flyer, roared towards the crossing at 70 miles an hour.
The light started flashing. I looked to my left and realized that it was the Flyer, and I looked at the kids and I said, "Oh my God, it's the Flyer."
The bus driver was oblivious to the fact the rear of her bus was overhanging the track.
We looked as it was to the left and it was getting closer, and we were in the car. We started screaming for the bus to go and, looking at the kids, we could see the kids in the bus. The light for her to turn to the left was still red. And with that, within a few seconds, bam, the train came through, smacked the bus. And from my vantage point, I never saw the light turn green.
A frantic rescue effort started just minutes after a commuter train heading for Chicago crashed into a school bus. Just after 7 o'clock this morning, the bus was stopped at a red light, its tail end sitting on the tracks while the driver waited.
7 of the children were killed.
I was at work, and I happened to be listening to a radio. I was sitting at a desk, and they broke over the radio and said that if you're in the area of Algonquin Road and Northwest Highway, to avoid it because a school bus had been hit by a train. And they didn't say what town at first. And God, when I heard that, it had to be us.
The nightmare had come true. Mike knew that his 14-year-old daughter would be on the school bus that reached the crossing at exactly this time.
I called the firehouse, and this one, Angie, answered the phone. All I said was, "Angie, how bad is it?" And she goes, "It's real bad. It's real bad." And I go, "Whose bus is it? Whose bus is it?" She goes, "The high school bus." I says, "Do you know if Michelle, my daughter, do you know if Michelle's is okay?" She goes, "I don't know. I don't know anybody. I don't know. I can't tell. I can't tell you." I had just hung up, and this friend of ours, this Susie, she called me, and she told me, "I just want to let you know Michelle is okay." And I said, "Well, where was she on the bus? Was it her bus?" And she goes, "Well, she wasn't on the bus. It was her bus, but she wasn't on the bus." And I said, "What happened?" She goes, "Well, she had an orthodontist appointment." And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh my God, that's right. She had an orthodontist appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's why she wasn't on there." And I was, you like, thank God,